After the surprise invasion of Crimea and a fast-forwarded referendum there, another blitzkrieg move from Moscow this Tuesday.
Crimea is our common heritage and the most important factor for the stability of the region. And this strategic territory should be under strong and stable sovereignty, which today can only be Russian.
Vladimir Putin, informing a joint session of parliament, he was signing, and he did in fact in front of them, that treaty that lays the way for the annexation of Crimea, ratification to follow. It comes less than 24 hours after the West slapped sanctions on Kremlin insiders. What's next for the fast-moving Russian president? Is he improvising, or does he have a plan? Will he make a move on eastern Ukraine, where some Russian speakers also want to sever ties with Kiev? Will Putin's reach extend wherever there are ethnic Russians? It's not just new authorities in Ukraine's capital that are distressed. Think nations like Moldova or NATO member Latvia. And of course, there's the West's next move. Europe's leaders chalking up air miles to Kiev, to Brussels, scrambling to keep up with the accelerated timetable set, it seems, by Moscow. Today, in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Putin's power play. And with us from Brussels, Czech Social Democratic member of the European Parliament, Libor ROUCEKMEP. Many thanks for joining us once again. He was Georgia's European Affairs Minister, Thornike GORDAZE, today with the Institute of Higher Studies on International Defense. I guess that's how you translate
National
it.
Defense.
National Defense. Oh, I almost got it right. Many thanks for being with us. Welcome back as well to Anton KOSLOV of the American Graduate School of International Diplomacy and also writes for the Russian edition of Vanity Fair. Thank you for being with us. And consultant Elen WASYLINA of the Observatory of the Black Gulf and Mediterranean Seas. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and on Twitter our hashtag F24debate. The Kremlin's St. George's Hall, the setting for Vladimir Putin to sign an annexation treaty that must now be ratified by Parliament and Russia's Constitutional Court. With strong emotion at times in his voice, Putin accusing the West of cheating Russia and ignoring its interest in the years that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Our Western partners, headed by the United States, prefer in their policy to be guided not by international law, but by their sense of self-entitlement. They started to believe that they have been chosen and that they are unique, that they are allowed to decide the fate of the world, that only they are in the right, they do whatever they want. And in the case of Ukraine, our Western partners have crossed the line. They've acted primitively, irresponsibly, and unprofessionally.
This was a moment to savor, I guess you could say, Anton KOSLOV, for the Russian president.
Well, I think he did what he felt he had to do.
There was a precedent. Remember back in 2005, he had said that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest cataclysm that the nation had faced, tragedy the nation had faced in the 20th century.
Well, geopolitical tragedy, disaster, sure. Well, yes, but I think right now he clearly the situation was ripe for him to grab what he wanted to grab, Crimea. I frankly don't think he's going to go for more than that. And it just you have to keep in mind, the Russian foreign policy in general is reactive. It's not at all proactive. And therefore, whenever the circumstances allow, Russians move. But I mean, they will never create those circumstances. They would always follow them.
Thornike GORDAZE, do you agree that the Russian president is reactive, not proactive?
No, what we saw last few weeks, it's the Western communities reacting to what Russia is doing in Ukraine, and unfortunately, I don't think the Russian president will stop with Crimea. The Crimea was not the final objective from the very beginning of this crisis. The objective is to change a pro-Western government that is now in Kiev and to put a more pro-Russian government. For that, Russia, of course, needs Crimea. This is one of the first step, maybe the first stage. Then the destabilization of the situation in eastern Ukraine. I don't think there will be immediately, at least, a military invasion of eastern Ukraine, but there will be lots of attempts of destabilization in this part of Ukraine, and the following step will be the chaos in Ukraine and the change of the government in Kiev. This is the plan.
Those are pretty specific predictions. What kind of timetable do you see?
Oh, it depends also on Western reactions, how firmly the West will react. For the time being, we see that all the sanctions that are designed and launched are a bit outdated because the Russian president is moving fastly, and first stage of sanctions that have been launched could not avoid what is going on. Now we need much more reaction, and it's unfortunate that only now the West is thinking about how to shape these sanctions, and all this period since the war, maybe in Georgia 2008, nothing was done to think about and to have a more I would say proactive strategy towards the Russian government.
All right, let's get back to that issue of sanctions, because of course it's essential to this conversation. But first, Ellen, you're just back from Moscow.
Yes.
We know that opinion surveys show that Putin is up in the poll ratings. You heard what he said about the West in that clip we just played. Today was a big moment for him.
Sure. I've talked to some people, and there, as well as, I've been up on the situation, and it's a moment certainly for rallying around national pride and Russian national pride. Is the move legal? We have to ask ourselves, what kind of legality is this referendum first, and who's in charge in Crimea? You have to go back to history to see the origins of, Crimea and how it was handed over to Ukraine in 1954. Of course, it would belong to Russia since Catherine the Great took it over in 1734. So there's a long history, and if you look at the ethnic and linguistic origins of Crimea, it is Russian speaking. So this was a moment probably, and of course we can't forget to talk about the Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol, in Crimea. We can also talk about energy pipelines running through Crimea. So I think it was important, given the change of government in Ukraine and in Kiev, after the refusal of the association agreement, then to secure Russia's position in Crimea, because the government in Ukraine, or Kiev, might have said, well, we're going to take over the Black Sea Fleet, although it has a lease until 2042.
Just maybe one short phrase. When we are talking about the history of Crimea and the ethnic composition of this region, please do not forget Crimean Tatars.
Sure, absolutely. Yes,
you're
absolutely right.
They're the autochthonous population of this region that was deported. And
absolutely, you're right. Thank you.
Libor Roucek, we're talking about history because it's important to, I suppose, frame this in context. And when you heard again at the outset Vladimir Putin say basically that he'd been disrespected these past years by the West, do you agree with him that perhaps Europe and the United States didn't grasp just how much Crimea meant to Moscow?
Yeah. Of course, we heard that today, and we hear it for many, many months and years. Russia is frustrated. As Mr. Putin said in 2005, Russia, the former Soviet Union, lost its empire, and the Russians feel it as a huge humiliation. But we have examples in history. Look at the British empires, also look at France and France's former colonies. So we just cannot give in to those moods. History was mentioned. Imagine, look at the pre-war map of Europe, and imagine if Germany today, for instance, claimed Kaliningrad, Eastern Prussia. Where would we be? We would be back to where we were in 1938 and 1939. So this is very dangerous. in Europe, in the world, we have international law. We have the principles of Helsinki Conference, for instance. We also have the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, where Russia guaranteed the borders of Ukraine. And now suddenly we have a move where, you know, these international guarantees, international law doesn't matter, and within a couple of weeks, a region which was, yes, of course, mainly populated by ethnic Russians.
Okay, but this brings me back.
International law, it was part of a different country. Now it's within 2 weeks incorporated into Russia. So
but this brings us back, Libor Roucek, to the question I put to you. Did the European Union and Washington underestimate how much it meant to Moscow?
I don't think that we underestimated it, but we have to say it clearly, because the same Russians are repeating the same about the whole of Ukraine. If you look at the Russian history, the fair state, the Kievan Rus, it was set up, you know, more than 1100 years ago in Kiev. But it doesn't mean that Russia has the right to, you know, annex Kiev or annex the entire territory of Ukraine. So we cannot agree with those principles.
You didn't see, though, the handwriting on the wall, though, when there was the overthrow on February the 22nd. Did you imagine that it would come to this so quickly?
I expected that there will be trouble. There were some signs, you know, there were some signs before, and also what is needed now. Of course, Crimea is one issue, but we should also look at the Ukraine proper. And we now talk only about Russia and the West, or Europe, United States, but we should also look at the situation in Ukraine. What Ukraine needs is what we call an inclusive government, where everybody will be, when there is a crisis, so everybody, both the Ukrainian speakers and Russian speakers, will be part of the government and will find solution for the entire country, because I think only on this way the territorial integrity of Ukraine can be preserved.
Let me ask you the question. A minute ago, you heard Thornike GORDAZE say that he feels as though it's going to stop there. Do you agree, or will Russia perhaps try to claw back a bit more land after Crimea, perhaps secure some parts, strategic parts on the peninsula, off the peninsula, that are the lifeline for staples such as water and natural gas?
Yeah. And that's why I mention Ukraine and Ukrainians. To a large extent, it will depend on Ukrainian response. And here I mean, first of all, that there is an inclusive government in Ukraine, that the whole country, no matter whether you are from the west or from the south or east, from a Russian-speaking part, will hold together. If this doesn't happen, so then I'm afraid Russia will be tempting to move further.
So there needs to be a reshuffle.
What I think Ukraine needs to have elections, you know, under international supervision, presidential elections, parliamentary elections, look at the constitution, look at how the country is administered. We have to ask the question, for such a huge country in terms of territory, also the ethnic diversity, when it would be better some sort of decentralization and to some extent also self-management. Again, we have examples in Europe, a small country such as Austria, it's organized on this principle. So I just think the same would be a solution for a country of the size and ethnic composition such as Ukraine.
Anton KOSLOV, your thoughts on this? Will Vladimir Putin stop now, or is he going to perhaps eye parts of eastern Ukraine? Is that just a strategy, as is the amassing of troops for what he calls military maneuvers near the border?
Well, his foreign minister, Lavrov, clearly declared that what they want is to have an all-inclusive government. They want to have a constitutional assembly. They want to have the Russian language being... So frankly, I don't think they're going to invade. But what we're talking here tonight is the fact that the independence of Crimea and then the annexation by Russia is completely illegal from the point of view of international law, and that is for sure. So the problem is not really Putin's next move to invade Ukraine, but the situation once we are put in front of the fact that Russia did violate the system of international law and did it in the most blatant and aggressive manner. I think that is the real question here. Whether Russian troops are going to, I don't think they will. I don't think Russia is in the position today to wage any type of war.
We saw with Georgia that the clock did not get turned back when it came to places like Abkhazia.
Yeah, of course there are parallels between what happened in 2008 and what is going on in 2014, and maybe the main reason why it happened in 2014 is that in 2008 Russia's government didn't pay any price for what was done, and it was already a violation of international law and the occupation and de facto annexation. It didn't really was annexed, but practically it's an annexation of these two former Georgian provinces. So Russia didn't pay any price for that. On the contrary, the West tried to appease Russia and tried to propose a reset, and we saw that the answer was not in the direction of conciliation. On the contrary, Russia interprets these kind of steps as a weakness, and Vladimir Putin believes today that the West is weak, then Mr. Obama is weak, and that's why he's going so far, and he will go as far as he can. With this,
Just how far he goes, of course, is the question. We have a reaction on Facebook that we'd like to read you from Temkin. He says, Crimea is not in Ukraine. The people wanted to join Russia and did it democratically. Those Ukrainians are invaders. Russia has the right to cleanse them out of Crimea.
This shows the situation inside Russia, because all media are now controlled by the central government, and there is a very strong nationalistic propaganda. You said that more than 75 or 80% of the population approves this move, because there is no dissident voices, and there will be less and less dissident voices in Russia, because this goes in parallel with the crackdown inside the country, with the even diminution of civil liberties, etc. And I think that the population of Crimea will very soon see what is the difference in living in a more or less democratic country.
We're going to talk more about Vladimir Putin's star power going forth. We have to take a very quick break, and we'll be back. You're watching the France 24 debate.